Is Jungkook and Taehyung's friendship really over? Why did Jungkook suddenly disappear in America right after the treason charges? And the most surprising thing, why did HYB look panicked and try to hide something that even their own staff couldn't cover up anymore? This scandal not only shook the hearts of the army, but also raised a big question. What is really going on behind the scenes? Is this all just a misunderstanding? Or is there a truth that has been silenced all this time? We never thought that the two names that are so often referred to as soulmates in the real world would be at the center of such a huge and painful whirlpool of scandal. But in reality, the world is shocked by a rumor that suddenly appears, spreading like wildfire in the middle of a dry forest. Jungkook is accused of having betrayed Taehyung, not just as a friend, but as part of something deeper, more personal, and more secret than anything the army could ever have imagined. The question is, where did it all start? And why Jungkook, when everything started to heat up, suddenly disappeared in America? No one answered. No one's talking. Not from the HYB side. Not from Taehyung. And especially from Jungkook, who suddenly swallowed the earth. But over time, crack after crack began to open. A quiet voice began to whisper something much more terrible than just a quarrel between friends. HYB staff, who had been silent all this time, began to give vague hints. And this is the beginning of everything. It all started with a night that will never be the same again. Night as Taehyung is seen leaving a room with red eyes and rash steps. The backstage cameras never captured his expression, but someone from the inside witnessed for himself what happened. And a few days later, the rumor began to spread. Taehyung felt betrayed. By someone he trusts the most, the army began to search for clues. The old videos are back. Clip interaction, body gestures, to the lyrics of the songs they sing at live events. It all feels like a puzzle slowly forming a new picture. But at a time when many thought this was just fan theory, one incident made everything drastically change. Jungkook did not attend an important event that had been scheduled far in advance. There is no official statement. No explanation. There is only confusion and silence, but silence is not emptiness. In that silence, a much colder than stormy truth emerged. Jungkook had apparently been in America since 2 days before the event. And it does not come alone. Then who's with him? Why did he leave secretly? And why does HYB seem to be trying to cover up his departure by giving a very generic statement when a HYB staffer, who has worked in the company's systems for a long time, anonymously sent a message to one of the accounts of a large fanbase? The world seemed to come to a standstill. What happened was not just a misunderstanding, but a decision made reluctantly by Jungkook himself for the sake of something he could not explain to the public. Does that mean betrayal is real? Or is Jungkook just caught up in a much more complicated game of emotions than we know? The staff also mentioned that HYB had called the internal team several times to discuss safeguarding Taehyung's reputation, as if they knew something had been or would be leaked to the public. In fact, some of the content featuring V and JK's interactions has recently been removed from the official channel, replaced with more neutral and controlled content. Then why did HYB have to erase such digital traces if everything was fine? A surprise came when one of the soldiers found old footage which was initially not considered important, in which Taehyung looks very upset when Jungkook mentions someone behind the stage. The speech was censored, but Taehyung's expression couldn't be hidden. "Don't mention him in front of me again," she said, throwing her eyes away. Who is he in question? Is this someone who is the main source of both tensions? Fans began to guess, and some even mentioned the name of HYB's own management, who had been known to be close to Jungkook. If it is true that there was third-party interference, someone taking advantage of Jungkook's proximity to orchestrate something behind the scenes, then things could be much more complicated. Did Jungkook realize he was being used? Or is he aware of it, but still chooses that path? Even more horrifying, news emerged that before his departure to America, Jungkook had recorded a long voice note that he never published. The voice note, according to an insider, contained an apology. But to whom? And for what? Meanwhile, Taehyung remains in Korea and begins to re-engage in several art projects alone. No mention of Jungkook. Without reference. Without interaction. whereas before, their names almost always came side by side. And this is where the most heartbreaking part comes in. The rumor that in fact Taehyung knew ahead of time that Jungkook was leaving. But not from Jungkook himself. Instead of a voicemail that was accidentally played in HYB's rehearsal room, a message from HYB staff to another manager who discussed Jungkook's departure in a forced tone. "He can't stay here if it continues like this," the voice said. "We knew Taehyung was going to get hurt, but the decision has been made." What does it mean to go on like this? Is there a prolonged conflict? Or is HYB hiding a big decision about BTS's future, and Jungkook is just part of a bigger strategy? Question after question kept popping up. But one thing is certain, Jungkook's departure was not a sudden decision. It was planned, and maybe even driven. Some of the army began voicing their anger towards HYB. Others grieve because they don't believe such a close relationship can crack because of something that isn't even clear yet. But all agreed, there is something to hide. And little clues are beginning to show that the real story is much darker than just the breakup of two friends. Now, the big question is, when will the truth really be revealed? Will Jungkook speak from America? Will Taehyung release the statement he's been holding? And will HYB continue to tightly close all this? Or, in the end, be forced to open everything by pressure from the public? One thing we can be sure of right now, this is not the end of the story. This is just the beginning. The army will not be silent. The world will not forget. And most importantly, the truth, sooner or later, will come out of its hiding place. But one thing that cannot be forgotten from this series of mysteries is how public voices began to split. Some still insist that this is just cheap gossip. But more and more are starting to dig, and the results of that digging are making things even more gripping. Because one by one the pieces of the incident began to fit like a puzzle that had been hidden behind a mirror made neatly by the agency. After news of the mysterious voice note circulated, a former staff makeup artist who had worked with BTS on a major project in the previous year began to talk, also anonymously. He said that the relationship between Taehyung and Jungkook had begun to look tenuous a few months before this incident exploded into the public. But not because of an ordinary quarrel, but because there is a third party who clamps the two into two different camps and makes them have no choice but to keep their distance. The third person is no ordinary person, not fans, not the manager, but a figure who has enough power to set the flow of BTS's strategy as a whole. Taehyung knows Jungkook is depressed, he said, but what hurts is that he was not given the opportunity to help her. Even when Taehyung tried to talk, he was kept away. I know that because I myself saw his security asked to escort Jungkook directly out of the studio, even though Taehyung was already waiting for him in the waiting room. And that's where another rumor started, that HYB actually has big plans for Jungkook solo. This plan is so ambitious, it even exceeds all the strategies they designed for other BTS members. But the plan had one condition, to keep Jungkook's image independent, neutral, and clear of the group's internal emotional dynamics, including avoiding too intense involvement with Taehyung. Does that mean they have to separate these two friends? Slowly, without turning it into a drama? And is HYB afraid that if the two get too close, then commercial decisions could be disrupted by emotional factors? All of those guesses became even wilder when Taehyung suddenly posted a black and white picture on his social media account. The picture is simple. Only two silhouettes of men sat in front of the reflection of the water. But her caption shook. But if one of us chooses to leave, should I still wait here? No name. There is no context. But the army knows it's not just poetry. That's not a coincidence. It was a scream delivered in silence. Then the world was shocked again by the appearance of a photo of Jungkook in Los Angeles with two strangers. One of them is allegedly a major music label executive from America who has been rumored to want to acquire Jungkook as a solo global act. To make matters more complicated, the photo shows them entering the building at night and leaving before dawn. Does this mean Jungkook is leaving BTS? Or are you being offered something too big to refuse? And is it true that his departure was a business decision that had to be executed even though it destroyed his emotional bond with Taehyung? Some fans even started to come up with crazier theories. that it wasn't actually Jungkook who betrayed Taehyung, but HYB who betrayed the two of them by exploiting their rift for long-term gain. But then, one leak emerged that made all those statements feel too real to ignore. An internal memo HYB accidentally exposed on a computer screen during an interview with the Japanese media and recorded in the camera. That day, an audio file lasting 4 minutes 36 seconds suddenly appeared on one of BTS's international fanbase accounts. No one knows where the file came from, but the voice was clear. No one could mistake it. It was Jungkook's voice. Not while singing, not during an interview, but it was Jungkook's voice that was crying that I end the recording, which seems to have been recorded late at night. There is the clinking of the clock, the sound of heavy breathing, and then the first sentence that makes anyone here choked. I know I would look like a coward, but I no longer know how to talk to you without hurting you. The sentence was followed by a long pause. Shortness of breath. The sobs are restrained. Then the next sentence sounds much more broken. I wanted to say everything was fine, but that's a lie. I'm hurt too, but I'm too scared to hurt you anymore. So I chose to leave. Many suspect that the voice note was not intended for the public, but for someone. And who else is the figure behind the word you, if not Taehyung? But the most heartbreaking part of the voice note wasn't just the words, but Jungkook's tone, like someone who has lost his way. He said that some decisions he can't undo, and whatever he says later, the world won't believe that he never intended to leave. Why does Jungkook feel the world won't trust him? Is it because he realizes his decision has hurt many people, especially Taehyung? Or does he know that his steps have been controlled by a power greater than him? Meanwhile, news of the voice note exploded on social media. HYB quickly issued a statement that the file was not sourced from official channels and asked the army not to disseminate it. But precisely that request adds to the suspicion that the file is true, and in the midst of this chaos, no less shocking news emerged, a short 8-second video showing Taehyung crying backstage at the concert. The camera was supposed to be turned off, but someone filmed it secretly. In the video, Taehyung looks down as he says slowly, "He didn't even talk to me before he left. But I know he shouldered it all himself." It was like opening a door that had been closed. That even though it looks like the betrayed party, Taehyung turns out to hold a deep understanding. But that doesn't mean he doesn't feel devastated. Quite the opposite. He was hurt by being too clueless. Then a figure appears who has been silent all this time, but apparently keeps an important key in this vortex, the genie. After a long absence from the spotlight due to his mandatory military service, Jin suddenly appeared in a short live session a few days after Taehyung's video went viral. During the live, Jin's face looked very serious. He didn't smile much, but in the middle of the broadcast, he said something that made the atmosphere dark. Sometimes you want to fix everything, but everything is too cracked before you can reach it. And then, without mentioning the name, the genie said, they were both injured, but one was forced to be silent and one was forced to leave. If you ask who's at fault, blame the people who made them choose. Who are the Jin by they? Fans strongly suspect that it is the highest management in HYB, because shortly after the broadcast was over, the live was deleted. And a few hours later, Jin's name was trending in Korea with the hashtag #ProtectJin, while HYB was further cornered. Another document emerged, this time leaked from an internal discussion of a promotion division meeting. The document was titled Crisis Scenario, Jungkook x Taehyung Rumor Management. The contents of the document contain a strategy to divert issues through other members' solo comebacks, as well as a special order not to allow the media to discuss the closeness of the two in interviews. What does this mean? HYB did try to kill Jungkook's narrative from its roots, but the pressure from the public is mounting. Several petitions demanding HYB to give an honest explanation began to spread with hundreds of thousands of signatures. And in an increasingly heated situation, one of HYB's media partner staff posted something that shook things up. Actually, they want to talk, but not allowed. They even recorded a clarifying video together. But until now, the video has not been released. Clarifying videos together? Jungkook and Taehyung? If true, then everything that happened during this time was a wound that was forced to remain silent. The pain of being locked up in a silent room due to reputational risk and industry strategy, and finally, On the eve of the climax of this drama, a letter appears. The letter was handwritten, inserted by an account known to be close to Jungkook's personal staff. The content is simple, just 2 paragraphs, but enough to make the world collapse in silence. I can't go back to a time when everything was simple. But if you're reading this, I want you to know, I still listen to the songs we once sang together. Perhaps there will be no stage that can unite us as it once did. But in my heart, you are still my friend. JK,